Hello there and welcome to this, the 184th edition of DF Direct Weekly, our weekly discussion show which discusses the latest gaming and technology news. As always, shout out to store.digitalfoundry.net for our merchandising wares. Do check that out, it really does help support the team. Let's introduce the panel, a lot to get through this week. First of all, he's back, John Innerman.
Yes, I am back, slightly jet-lagged, but I am back. And I've seen a lot. I've seen the future.
Okay, you've seen things.
I've seen things.
And Alex Battaglia, hello.
Yeah, unlike John, I'm jet-lagged for a different reason. I've been playing a lot of Unreal Engine on PC lately, and
womp womp.
I need to take a nap.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's crack on with the first news topic. But first, this. Digital Foundry is proudly sponsored by MSI's range of next-generation QD-OLED monitors, available in 32 and 27-inch 16:9 configurations, along with ultra-wide 32:9 49-inch and 21:9 34-inch models. These are some of the best monitors we've ever tested, with incredible motion clarity, HDR True Black 400 support, OLED burn-in protection, AI features and genuinely game-changing performance. Check the video description to learn more, and for UK viewers, a chance to win an MSI 27QRX QD-OLED, a Metaphor Refantasio PC and Xbox game code, and exclusive tote bag. Okay, first news topic of the week. This is a show that is about the latest gaming and technology news. So it is with a certain level of hushed awe that I'm about to introduce a news topic that is essentially a PC port of a 14-year-old game.
Wow.
Red Dead Redemption is coming to PC. It's been announced. It has some modern features that we shall likely discuss. There are spec recommendations for it. And I guess we go to our PC expert. Alex, tell us what you think about this.
Well, it's been a long time coming. That is the obvious bit. My interest levels are pretty much zero as a result of that, though, unfortunately, because, come on. I know this is going to sell really well just because people buy Rockstar games on PC, but it has been so long, and I think a lot of people have played this game via other means, that this is more like one you just kind of buy for your back catalog, but the price doesn't actually allow you to do that, I would argue. It's kind of pretty expensive. So it's not like something you'd buy just kind of on a whim. It's actually a pretty heavy investment. But regardless of that, I do want to talk about the tech aspects of it. It does offer up modern scaling technology, I believe HDR, and toggles as well for the kind of draw distance and shadow quality, where those are aspects arguably of an older game that would have been dialed back, specifically, especially for those, Xbox 360 and PS3, that you should really be able to push up to almost have zero LODs in the game at this point. Honestly, the game was already kind of geometry starved looking, I would say, when it came out in comparison to some other games. But now you should be able to push out stuff like grass draw distance and, there isn't that much grass in the game, but stuff like bushes and cacti at a distance, which I would hope. I think that's interesting, but I did see a lot of people online kind of worrying about the specs, and I think it's really unwarranted. We can talk about that a bit, I guess. The specs for the game point out basically a semi-modern Ryzen for the recommended, as well as something like an RTX 2070 and RX 5700, I believe. Maybe the XT, I can't recall. And the point of that is that those are GPUs that have similar GPU power to the current generation consoles of PS5 and Xbox Series X. Not the exact same, but within, a certain percentage threshold there.
Within acceptable parameters.
Yes, exactly. And at that point, they're just trying to say that this is what you can use to get that current generation experience that we see on the PS5 after the game was updated there. And I feel like that's all rather reasonable. The GPUs and CPUs they have listed, though, for the minimum spec, I presume have a lot to do with what they had on hand and as well as the fact that this game is DX12, which I think I'm not a huge fan of that, actually. This was originally a game written around the time Rockstar's releases on PC were either DX9, DX10, or 11, and you could choose in the menu. So it's not doing anything that actually requires the higher end APIs, but this is written to DX12 for whatever reason. And as a result, that is going to limit the baseline GPU you can use, as well as the version of Windows, which, obviously this game's only coming to Steam and stuff, so it's limited to things past Windows 8 at this point. But I don't think that's a great idea necessarily. Technically, I imagined an 8800 GT or even a 7800 GT could run this game at some reasonable level if it was DX9 or whatever. But that is the way modern game dev works, to kind of push things to a newer API. Hopefully, though, it means that they do the new API well, with all the explicit memory management that requires, and more control over GPU, as well as more control over PSO compilation. Let's hope the devs actually do it well, and we don't get like oh, by the way, this game runs at 6,000 FPS on PC, but it stutters. That'd be really embarrassing and an absolute waste of everyone's time. So yeah, I would say not worry about those recommended specs at all. It'll probably glide and fly at any frame rate you want, but just be a bit more cautious because this game is DX12.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just a couple of notes from me. I was just looking at the specs. I googled Red Dead Redemption PC specs, and I got this article from Rock Paper Shotgun, and the headline is this: "Shout out to Red Dead Redemption's PC requirements for allowing me to finally meet the recommended specs for something." And it's like, well, you'd expect that considering the game's 14 years old. But as you say, there is what you might call a certain degree of bloat in those specs, Alex.
Yes.
And it's interesting that the 960 and the R7 360 are kind of probably a on par or a touch more powerful than the PS4 and Xbox One.
Right.
So that is like a generation beyond. But I think you're quite right. It will run on anything that would likely support DX12. And it'd be interesting to see how low you can go.
It would be interesting.
Yeah, and I guess, they're just going back to really old parts here. I was quite amused also to see the minimum specification CPU-wise, FX 9590. That's like, peak bulldozer AMD.
It's awful, but why not? It ran on a cell, sure, it could run on that.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of a small anecdote I shall share, which is, you were talking about the scalability of vegetation. Back in the day, I did the face-off for Red Dead Redemption on PS3 and 360, and it was an outright 360 victory. And I actually got a stealth email from one of the developers afterwards, and he considered the face-off as kind of like, he literally described it as somebody marking his homework. And something that he also said in there was that the map, because we were talking a lot about the detail downgrades in PlayStation 3, and he was basically saying that when the map was designed, there was no actual plans for a PS3 port.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so this is just kind of like, it's quite interesting how secretive Rockstar is, and I think there's like probably a huge amount of anecdotes that we're probably never going to get any kind of visibility on there, but that one was quite interesting. DX12, I mean, I'm assuming that it is DX12 because there was some degree of a porting effort made for the current generation consoles, specifically PS5 and obviously the Switch. Who knows what's happening with Xbox at this point. But John, any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, first, I'm a little bit disappointed with those requirements because I was hoping I could test this on the Fury X. Does the Fury X do DX12? I don't think it does.
It does do DX12.
Does it?
Yeah, it doesn't have driver support anymore, however.
Yeah, the question is whether or not it'll even run is another question.
And I really wanted to see that. But at least we can assume that it would run beautifully on that shining Radeon 7 there in the background, in Rich's upper right corner there.
Well, maybe that exact one, but one of them. Is that the working one, Rich?
That's the one that doesn't work.
Oh, that's the one that doesn't work. So maybe not that exact one. So, okay, my real thought here, though, is that I think it's cool that this is happening simply because this essentially becomes like the definitive release. It's the version that will stand through time. It's the version that can scale up as far as you can push it to its limits, and it will just continue to be available, I assume, for years and years and years, and playable on PCs henceforth. So it's basically just like making it accessible in a way that is very forward-looking, which is a great thing, and I'm happy that they're doing it for that reason. And also, given how light it is, it'll be one of those games that I'd imagine you could push up to 8K very easily, get some very high resolution imagery going on. Which would, it should have excellent image quality as a result. And yeah, it's an older game. There's limitations. The polygon bear in the trailer, I especially love, with all of his very sharp shoulders. It's not quite sharp knees, but it'll do. It's
up there.
It's up there. I will say though, I think the terrain stuff still looks good, but man, this era of character models with all their normal map glory, I think it looks pretty rotten in a lot of ways. And in some ways, right. I actually think character models from top tier like PS2 original Xbox era games can look more visually appealing than,
less uncanny
than these. Like, I think the push towards normal maps was important and a good thing, but during this era, there's just that ugly, blurry, low res normal map stuff on low polygon models. A lot of times it doesn't hold up well, and the characters just look really grimy, especially at high resolutions, because this is a game designed for 720p. Let's be honest. And sometimes assets don't scale well up to high resolutions. All the flaws become extremely evident, which is kind of the case here. But still, good game. I'm happy it's on PC, and I'm sure it will sell well because it's Rockstar, right?
Absolutely.
I also expect a good deal of modding to come about as a result of this game, which could, if there are things the developer is not maybe aware of or taking care of, that a lot of people in the community will try and fix them up or get them looking better in some aspects. So all those grimy textures you talked about, those really bad normal maps and materials, maybe there is something to be done there, John.
That's a good
I doubt
point.
The models, though.
That's a good point, though. You're right. The modding community may step up. And I also expect, I think Double 11 has done some good work in the past, and I kind of expect this to be a pretty awesome PC version. At least that's my hope. So this should be something that the community will be very happy to get their hands on, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if the modding community steps up, but, bearing in mind how Rockstar seems to have declared war on the modding community, they may well be stepping down as well.
We'll see.
I mean, I just want to say one last thing about the DX12 thing. It actually does sadden me a little bit, because one thing I really love doing with older titles is actually running them on older. This is just an Alex nerd thing, but I do love running them on older hardware to see like what could have been, and what was. And here, DX12 really just limits it to any future going PC. And as well as it being online only.
This isn't that interesting of a game in that sense, though. It's not doing anything special or cutting edge that couldn't.
Yeah, you're right. But
that sort of testing gets interesting when you're like saying, "Oh, I want to run Doom 3 on a Voodoo card, or I want to run one Crysis on like a GeForce 3 or something." When you're stepping back multiple generations before features existed and like shoehorning it in, that stuff is cool. But this is just like what it's gonna look like. It would work on those machines if not for the API.
I'm very curious to what instructions it requires on PC. Can you actually run it on something like what was it compiled to?
Thank God it has frame gen too.
Oh yeah, you definitely need that in this game. Actually, this could be arguably one of the games where frame gen might lower your frame rate, because it has a base cost. It may be more expensive a base cost than just rendering the game. I'm very curious about a lot of this.
We'll find
Except
out,
maybe
man.
at 80K. We'll see.
Okay, right. So Red Dead Redemption's coming out October the 29th. we will be covering it. I think it would be crazy not to, bearing in mind we've been calling for this port for untold years.
Yeah.
And we'll have more on that then. But with that, let's move on. Okay, so there's a lot of things happening with Nintendo at the moment. Perhaps predictably, none of them to do with Switch 2. Let's actually take this question, first of all, from supporter Tyrus1235. Good day to all the GF gents! Exclamation point. Glad to see another bespoke episode of the weekly show! Exclamation point. My question is mainly for John, but the other members of the panel are free to answer as well. Thanks for that clarification. It's weapons free, Alex. We're allowed to have an opinion. When will you buy and review the newest piece of Nintendo hardware, the Nintendo Alarmo? What are its specs? Can it run Doom? What about Crysis? Is it using a beautiful OLED screen? Or should we expect yet another LCD screen? Thank you for all the time. Thank you all for the time and hope you have a wonderful weekend and week ahead of you! Exclamation point. Well, John, you've been singled out here for your expert opinion, and I'd like to hear it as well. They've made an alarm clock. It makes Nintendo-style noises. Apparently there's some level of gesture support.
Wow.
I don't
understand. What?
Are you buying one? £90?
I don't know.
What?
That's
available for purchase by Nintendo Switch Online subscribers only.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
What a wild thing. I don't know what to say about this yet. It's a very strange idea. But to answer one of his questions, I do believe it could run Doom. I'm sure the SoC buried in this thing is perfectly capable of running Doom just fine if somebody's able to sort of break it open and access it, right? Crysis, no. 0 chance. But Doom, absolutely. It's probably not an OLED screen, let's be honest. Although it probably should be, because if it's an alarm clock, you actually would... I'd rather have that deep black contrast and ability to appear dark versus like an LCD backlight always glowing in your room at night, which sucks. But I mean, I need to see it in action. I don't really use an alarm because I work from home and I just sort of naturally wake up when I wake up about the same time every day anyway. So I don't need an alarm clock. So I don't really have any purpose for this.
So you're going old school, circadian rhythms.
Correct. That's the way it works.
You shorten and you just start waking up at 6 a.m. for some reason.
Pretty much.
Alex, I'm going to tell you about the features of this alarm clock.
Please
then I want your expert opinion.
Alarmo.
Remember the Alarmo, John. That's so stupid.
It plays sounds inspired by Nintendo games to wake the user. The clock reacts to body movement by playing other sounds from the company's games. Users can snooze the alarm with gestures and end it by simply getting out of bed or by pressing a button. Alarmo can keep a record of the user's movements while they're asleep. That's slightly sinister, isn't it?
I know.
Some statements from Nintendo here. Alarmo responds to your body's movement with game sounds so you can feel like you're waking up in the game world itself. Set an alarm inspired by 5 Nintendo games, with more alarms on the way as free updates as they become available. Nintendo says users could choose from 35 scenes inspired by Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 3's Pikmin 4, and Ring Fit Adventure.
Wow.
For the man who's completely uninspired by the Nintendo Switch, this must be like
this is my
scraping the barrel.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of fun for children. That is one thing I could imagine if I had a child who was really loved their Pikmin or something like that. They could probably have a lot of fun with this making noises like Pikmin or what do. It's cute. But I actually do think they mentioned updates, so this thing is probably Wi-Fi enabled. It does sound
yes.
It does sound like a little bit like how do you call this? Like a GDPR nightmare? I don't know. Like what if someone hacked it and they have access to your body movements throughout your house? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want this necessarily in my house without a good Wi-Fi password and encryption, maybe. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that.
What could I say?
$90, $90 US dollars, £90.
£90 and $100 in the US, available in retail early 2025.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, that's inflation. Okay.
I think if you're a Nintendo fan, you're going to lap this up. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. And then, if it's got a little sprinkling of the Nintendo magic in there, beyond some of this stuff, I think people will be quite happy about it. But it did sort of reminds me, because we did actually know about this earlier via some sort of FTC filing that was talking about its Wi-Fi capabilities. And the sort of speculation surrounding about what it might be, and there's that was quite interesting, and it turns out to be an alarm clock. I think that's just fantastic, and it's so Nintendo. They just sort of defy expectations in a completely unexpected way. It's just pure Nintendo. I love it. But there was other Nintendo news this week. There was actually a sign-up period, which apparently lasted just 5 minutes. 10,000 slots available to test some Nintendo Online-related feature, which is going to roll out this month in its test phase. And actually, got a supporter question here. Lux says, "Hello, DF!" Exclamation point. Seems that Nintendo is testing a cloud service. Well, people think it's a cloud service because allegedly in the source of the web page, it was saying that this service is best tested in TV mode on the Switch, and it prefers a wireless connection, a wired connection.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that would have been strange, but
yes, that would have been very strange. Which does kind of suggest a cloud service. Anyway, it seems that Nintendo is testing a cloud service, and my bet is it's going to be for Nintendo Switch's online GameCube emulator. It would only make sense. ROMs on GameCube have a much bigger size than previous emulators, and as it is right now, with the low internal storage on most, in brackets, all Switch models, users wouldn't be able to download the app if they add 10 plus games without the aid of an SD card. Maybe Wii could also be included. Well, I'm not going to rule anything out, because, as I said, Nintendo always defies expectations in the most unexpected ways. If this source leak from the webpage is accurate, it does kind of sound like a cloud service. I do think the Switch could probably emulate GameCube, though. We've got, didn't we actually cover some NVIDIA Shield?
It works.
So
especially with modern Dolphin.
Absolutely, technically could do it. I don't think that's the issue. I think what he's getting at.
Why would you stream it?
I think streaming would be stupid. I agree. I hope that's not what it is. But the way that the Nintendo Online services work is that it's a singular app that you load up, and all the games available for that specific platform are just in the app. They're all included. Right. So the app size is determined by the games available. With GameCube, if they do it the way I would imagine Nintendo might do it, it would just be a bunch of 1.4 gigabyte images jammed into that app, which would instantly require a ton of space, which the Switch doesn't have, which means that it would make if they kept the same interface design of having that singular app, that would make the GameCube very challenging, only primarily because of space as opposed to actual emulation. But if cloud is the solution to this, one, that sucks, but then two, thinking about it, I don't think the GameCube is even all that good of a candidate at this point for this sort of thing, because most of the best GameCube games that might show up on such a service have already been ported or showed up elsewhere, or you know what I mean? Like, there's not that much of a reason for this at this point, I would say. Like, what are you going to do? Wind Waker, Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime, all those games. They've all received modern versions, stuff like Star Fox Adventures. That would be cool to put on there, but that's a rare game. It could appear. Microsoft's played ball with that before, but Eternal Darkness, that would be cool, but there's not that many.
Eternal Darkness, wow.
So I'm not really sure what they would do with this, and I think Wii would also be difficult to just do straight emulation, given how that interface typically works, right? Yeah. Like, I don't think it'd be that. I mean, they could do custom mappings per game, of course, but it doesn't feel that Super Nintendo like. It doesn't feel that Nintendo like to do that sort of thing. So I really don't know what this is going to be.
Well, let's talk about Occam's razor. which, let's be fair, Nintendo does
cut
often,
myself on it this morning.
defy. It's basically, whatever you think the most plausible thing is, it is likely that. If you've got a space problem on your Switch because of the app, I don't think the plausible solution to that is to actually roll out a huge cloud infrastructure project. Surely changing the app and selecting what games you want to download is for a superior quality experience is the more plausible route forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this is. Apparently the test is going to be this month. I mean, I didn't get in because literally the slots were occupied within,
what an odd
5 minutes.
What if it's
launch.
the Me channel, but it's streaming? They should bring back Mii's. Do they have Mii's? No, they don't have Mii's.
They show up in games sometimes, I believe.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great part of the Wii, the Mii's. I love it.
You don't need streaming for that.
I mean, what do you need streaming for?
Maybe.
You need streaming for things that the console isn't
For the
capable
dumpster
of.
to fill it.
The other thing, of course, is a streaming solution for a system that is inherently designed to be mobile. I mean, none of this makes sense. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it actually is. Maybe it is something that it just isn't really. Maybe they've just been working on a cloud infrastructure system and they want to test it. Maybe they will put emulation on it. I mean, Antstream exists.
For the future, maybe. Maybe, yeah, if it were streaming, what if it was streaming of games? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like a subscription service Nintendo would do that would require streaming. And I really can't think of anything good.
There's almost no purpose to that, yeah.
Yeah. So never mind.
Okay. Well, look. The mystery shall be revealed at some point this month because the testing is happening this month. And, well, we'll see what it's all about.
Maybe it's a play to reveal the Switch 2 and there's some kind of component we don't know about. And they're going to involve everybody that's signed up with the Switch 2 reveal, even if they don't know it yet.
Like an I Love Bees kind of thing?
I don't know.
But Nintendo?
Exactly.
Wow.
I Love Bees? I don't know.
I Love Bees.
Sorry.
Maybe it's an elaborate alarm clock interface. Who knows?
True.
All bets are off. Let's move on to the next news topic. Interesting news from Sega this week. An announcement has been made. It is the 10th anniversary of Alien Isolation, and a sequel is now in quote-unquote early development at Creative Assembly. And they're going to be working on a sequel. There's not much more in terms of detailage beyond that. But I'm interested in what you guys make of it, and also the legacy, obviously, of the first game, which I think people kind of realized its greatness at launch, but it now is, well, what can you say, an established classic, right, Alex?
100%. I think a lot of people look fondly back at this game and they really respect everything it did. Visually, audio wise, I also think the gameplay was brilliant for the era when it came out. And them saying they are finally working on a sequel, I think it is a little bit sad that it is coming so late, for a variety of reasons, rather than maybe having come out years ago with the same team. But it is nice to see because, survival horror like this game was in a first-person perspective isn't always too common, and especially the Alien franchise, which I think is just a perfect setting for video games. It's really good for it. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. But at the same time, I'm a little skeptical about it capturing the magic of the first game. The magic of the first game was partially a group of really, really nerdy people who loved Alien and the special team within Creative Assembly who did not make first-person games, right? Assembled to make one using its own technology, which was, I think, really... It pioneered actually a lot of things later games would do. And, just from like when you read about how like they got the Fox intro by replaying VHS tapes and stuff over and over again to break it down, like, and all the sounds and visuals from the film in that movie, it's brilliant. And I'm not sure if they can necessarily capture that magic. And technology-wise, I'd be curious what they do, because Creative Assembly left that engine as it was and didn't work on it after the fact. And nowadays, reviving all the processes that existed to make that game, probably not worth it. I imagine they might run with Unreal, for example. And I'm not sure if I'd want that, actually, interestingly enough.
Ooh.
I don't know. John, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with you. And I think this is what's going to make a sequel difficult, as it was right time, right place, right people that really respected the source material in a way. And hopefully, if they are doing this, as they say, they'll actually staff up in that way again, find those people. So I'm sure those people, those types of people, will hopefully seek them out as well. But yeah, the engine stuff, like you say, Alien Isolation is one of the most impressive looking games of that era, and I would argue it still looks amazing today. It's only really let down by the anti-aliasing techniques. At least the Switch version got TAA, which was cool. But like, just the materials quality, like, it was perfect. They absolutely nailed it. It has that almost analog film look to it at time as well. Like, people always complain about chromatic aberration, for instance, but that's a case where I actually say it works. Like, the game benefits from it. It gives it that somewhat lo-fi look that is just beneficial to it. And then the game itself, it's very tense. And it's not just the alien tracking you by any means that's scary. Like, things like the Working Joe will forever stick with me. Just their
Yes.
weird plasticine
Freaking
face.
terrifying.
The way they march around. Like, to me, that's like, oh man, this is like the kind of experience that the System Shock 2 gave me back in the day, where there's some sort of enemy in the environment that doesn't have any sort of like normal thinking, emotional sort of capacity. It's just like a machine that is there, and it is looking for you at times. And you're like very carefully moving around that environment while trying not to disturb them, because your resources are so limited. And it's this tension of like exploring the station while staying out of trouble. That was so compelling. And just like the amount of the way they designed that world, the encounters throughout it, the storytelling, the whole experience, the sound, it's unbelievable. And I genuinely think that making a proper sequel to this is going to be extremely challenging. Whoever's tackling this within Creative Assembly, they have a gigantic amount of work cut out for themselves. I hope they can realize it. I hope they understand what this actually entails. I would like to think they would. The fact that it's being announced 10 years later like this, to me, suggests that there probably is a passionate group of people that are like, we really want to follow this up. We want to do something with this again. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't bother. Like, this doesn't seem like Sega would be like, yeah, we need to get these guys working on this right away. It's more like somebody within the team was like, I want to do this. They pitched it. They're like, all right, this sounds good. They convinced Sega that they can do it. And now it begins. So,
yeah,
in that sense, I do have some hope.
Well, what do you want to see from it, John, in terms of gameplay?
The main thing I would like to see is sort of an expansion on the alien sort of AI. Like, they're going to have to come up with another purpose for it. It can't just be like another exact ship like that you're exploring. Although I think a ship should be part of it. Maybe take it down to a planet surface at some point, back up into a ship. I don't know. The environment will have to change a bit, but the AI, though, I think there was a lot of scripting stuff, like magic happening, which is fine with the alien. But I would like to see them. I don't know. There's just been a lot of research done in terms of computer interactions and AI and everything in the past decade that I'd be curious to see if they could leverage that in some interesting ways to do something with the alien character. And maybe, but I'm also want to see more threats. Like, I love those Working Joes, as we said, and the other things you faced. I'm sure they can come up with some other new threatening things that are hopefully just as terrifying and interesting to face off against. I just want to see that sort of experience and relive that sort of horror-like experience again in a new way. And I hope they can pull it off.
Yeah.
Alex?
I mean, tech-wise, I would love to see the same approach to just like a unification of lighting and shadowing. That game I thought was brilliant. It was so far ahead. and referenced years after the fact as a result of that from many developers. And I would love to see that on a gameplay perspective. I'd actually love to see them actually taking over those systems from the first game, which worked really well, and expanding on them even more. One of the things I loved in the first game was how, like, when you'd bring out a weapon, like the really cool revolver that the game has, there would be like a ready animation, and then you'd ready the weapon and then shoot it and then reload each like cartridge one by one. And I thought that added a lot to the game's tension, making it's not just plug and play and shoot, like you actually had to think while shooting. And that carried across to a lot of the environmental interactions. Like when you had to open a door, it required like a certain like arc movement of the mouse. I played on PC. I only know what that was like, but you had to like arc the mouse and like hit certain buttons in a combination to get things to work. And if you're running from something like the alien, the tension buildup was huge. I would like to see that expanded even more and more environmental interaction than the first game, because using the space station or whatever you find yourself on as a weapon or way to move around, kind of sim like, I think would enhance that survival against something that is much more powerful and threatening than you in a direct conflict. So yeah, like John said, though, AI, make that thing scary and have senses that you have to plan around.
Okay. Well, we've had an announcement that it is in development, but how long games take to develop. So when we actually get to play it, who knows? But I'm sure we're going to be really looking forward to what Creative Assembly are cooking up there. But with that, let's move on. Okay, so PlayStation 5 Pro is happening. Pre-orders happened this week. I think we've all got pre-orders pre-ordered. In case, we always pre-order hardware because there's no obligation whatsoever for Sony to actually give us hardware. It's not as if we have a God-given right to it. But even so, some news this week. Now, we're going to be talking about John's trip to Japan a bit later on. But at TGS, Tokyo Game Show, John, you did actually play the PlayStation 5 Pro. You've seen it. You've seen what it has to offer. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it now. Tom Morgan's seen it. Actually, pretty much everyone on the team has seen it except you, Alex. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious what your takeaway is, John.
Yeah, I got to say, in person, the end result was more impressive than I expected, I guess you could say. Now, this being TGS, the actual game selection I had access to was more limited. Basically, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Gran Turismo 7 were both shown on the system. Rebirth, I famously tweeted about its image quality being a huge leap, and it was actually even larger than I anticipated. It genuinely looks like it's game changing in terms of that, because, as I think we famously, or not so, covered back when the game was released, is that image quality was not very good in this game compared to other competing titles and what we typically see these days. It was a lot blurrier and just like lacking detail than we were used to seeing, especially in the performance mode. So much so that Square had to react to the feedback from the demo of people complaining and added another mode, which just ended up being nearest neighbor upscaling of the lower res source instead of bilinear scaling. Or linear scaling. So that was weird. But in the demo, they allowed you to switch between the linear scaled performance mode and the new PSSR mode. And it was like lifting a veil of like smear and blur. And it, sitting close, I think I was using like a 42-inch screen, similar to my monitor here, sitting very close to it. So, I could very much pixel peep as much as I pleased. And it just straight up looked like a clean 4K presentation now. Very, very, very sharp. All the various like sparkling aliasing issues, the blur, everything was just lifted away. And you could just see much further into the distance with full clarity. And it ran great at 60 FPS. So right away, that made a big difference in terms of just making the game far more presentable. Now, could they have done better in the first place on the regular base PS4? I tend to think so, yeah. But this is more just a case of seeing what PSSR can do over some of the more standard techniques. I think FF7R just uses like a normal TAA with like a basic regular upscale, a spatial upscale, nothing fancy, no reconstruction. This is obviously reconstruction. So then there was Gran Turismo 7, and that they only had the 4K ray tracing mode available on display. They did not have an 8K screen there, unfortunately, so I couldn't see that mode in action. Although I actually asked about the 8K mode, whether you'd be able to downsample it to 4K, and they said not currently, no. And I tried to convince them that that's a good idea, you should do it. And I think they will look into that. But for now, it's like it only engages if your display is set to 8K. So basically, I wanted to see if I could check out the downsampled 8K mode on this 4K screen, and that was a no-go. It's not supported. But the 4K mode does indeed have the ray tracing. And as I pointed out from that initial footage, the internal resolution has been dropped, and they rely on PSSR to get up to 4K. And in person, it looked a lot more convincing to my eye than it did when pixel peeping the ProRes videos somehow. I thought it looked very, very sharp. It was a very clean presentation suddenly. And seeing the game running at 60 FPS with the ray traced reflections, which obviously due to the internal res being a little lower, reflection quality takes a minor hit, as we know. But it's very convincing, and I would say far more convincing than what we saw in the PC updates for, or I guess even on console, the ray traced reflections in Forza, basically, which are extremely limited and not great. Here,
right,
you get basically, aside from the resolution, the quality is basically on par with what you see in the replays previously in the game, which means the roughness cutoff is set to such a point that even very rough materials actually show RT reflections. And cars have a lot of those with various plastics. It's a mix of things on a car, and having the reflections be consistent across the body in that way, driving, I found it quite pleasing. They actually, the default, I was able to choose different cars, but the default car they had selected was like a giant, like mini bus. So it's like a giant flat bus with a ton of variable roughness surfaces from the glass, the paint, the plastic bottoms. So like, it ended up being a great demonstration of seeing the environment and other cars reflecting on your car when using the third person camera, which was cool. So, you know, GT7's already a gorgeous looking game, and just adding this in really pushes it up. And it's exactly what I think we had hoped to see. We've talked about this many times. It's like just getting those real-time ray trace reflections actually in the game is awesome. And of course, the other benefit here is that you can, in the replays now, you get ray traced reflections at 60 FPS. Whereas obviously in the base PS4 version, it was 30 FPS capped, but it could drop below 30 points. Whereas here now you get full 60 FPS replays with the ray traced reflections. So the whole game across the board now can just be 60 with RT, and that's it. And I think that's awesome.
Cool.
It's just standardized.
That's cool.
So yeah, impressions were positive, and seeing the unit in person as well, I think it does look better than the regular PS4, just like the Slim does as well. They don't really, it's hard to tell from photographs, but when you actually see it in person, it is less bulbous somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the original
Well, you
is
have the
a thick
advantage
boy.
over me here, John, because I haven't seen the actual unit. I have seen the dev kit now, and as expected, it's identical to the existing PlayStation 5 dev kit. You can't tell the difference. Well, what can I say? It is a case where I think you do have to get the full effect. Obviously, you need to see it. It's the same with anything. I mean,
Sure.
You can only go so far with a limited media playback system like YouTube. And I'm kind of thinking, you know, a lot of people are saying I'm not seeing any difference, etc., etc. That's kind of not the fault of the software in many ways. I mean, there's a reason you have to do zooms and stuff to actually highlight the differences between stuff. I mean, most people watching our videos are doing so on 5 to 7 inch mobile devices.
Exactly.
So, you know, those are the sort of challenges. When you're actually sitting there with the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's clearly a superior device to the base PlayStation 5. Actually, it brings up this question from Leftist Hominid. When a multi-plat PC port is broken and I really want to play the game, I will play it on consoles. With the arrival of PSSR on the PS5 Pro, how likely is it that developers will stop using a horrible FSR upscaling on that platform? I I think I hate FSR more than Rich hates the Master System. Whoa, hold on a minute. Let's stop.
Whoa.
Broken PC ports are one of my motivations to buy a PS5 Pro. Well, I'm curious about your thoughts on that, Alex, but I do think that there's no real need to use FSR on PlayStation 5 Pro
Absolutely not.
titles.
No, I don't think so. There is, I mean, unless there proves to be something really wrong with PSSR, which I doubt, everyone should be looking to do it, unless performance is maybe like 120 hertz mode, they wouldn't maybe use it, or like some sort of weird scaling, because it has a cost, and that's the only reason why I think they would use other things like TAAU or FSR2. So like I don't want to say like every dev's going to use it. I want to be a little bit more realistic than that. But I think it should be superseding FSR2, which is why they made it in the first place. It is always a shame that Sony can't just slag on FSR2 in a video and show how PSSR is better. I think that would sell. It would sell better probably than having to show off what they've shown off before. But regardless of that, I think that is a good, if you're looking to avoid really bad multi-platform releases on PC. And I would say it's mainly the ones that have PSO stutter. Those are usually the ones where I would also argue that you can get a technically smoother experience on console if it's just chock full of PSO stutter. And in which case the Pro would be the better place to play, presuming the frame rate holds up there. And just expensive though, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the nuclear option really to actually spend $700 on a console, because maybe your $1,500 PC.
Yeah, or more.
Is having issues. Has those issues.
Just last thing, it's also, I mean, not buying the game on PC and then rewarding the console version is also a little weird. I would rather like you get like really angry on Twitter or something. I don't know how to explain it, but like you just can't accept. It would be great if there was more audience, I don't know, anger or directed.
We don't need more anger today, Alex.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know what the word is, but just like some way consumers could make it really well known that it's not really acceptable to release PC games the way they are released.
Constructive criticism.
Yes.
Sure.
So one more thing though about the Pro is I also asked the Sony people there about, and it says expected, the VRR stuff. VRR was not enabled on any of the demos, and I actually asked, do they have any intention of changing the way VRR works? Basically to allow lower frame rate compensation. And what do you think they said?
No comment?
No, they did comment. It's just like, no, like currently.
No,
it could actually, they did not rule it out. It's just that currently the PS5 Pro makes no changes to the way that works, but they did indicate that they've heard us talk about this many times and have taken the feedback on the nose. So we'll see if that eventually changes. And if it does change, I'd imagine it would even apply to the base PS5. So we'll see.
Yes.
I sure hope it does. I hope if you guys are watching this, please consider updating the way VRR works. So, but yeah, I think the problem there is just the 60 hertz output thing, right? Because you can't really do LFC very well at 60 hertz. You need to force the system into 120 hertz mode, basically. So that also relies on the developer versus Xbox, where it's like a system-wide setting.
Some extra PlayStation 5 Pro news, which is quite intriguing. Rod Ferguson, who serves as Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Diablo franchise at Activision Blizzard. This is a report from VGC, by the way. He was asked whether they're going to be supporting PlayStation 5 Pro with Diablo 4 and Vessel of Hatred.
Vessel of Hatred.
I love these names. It's like kind of like death metal bands.
Vessel of Hatred.
I love seeing company execs get on stage. Like you imagine Sarah Bond walking out. Today we're talking about the Vessel of Hatred. I know you're all excited for it.
We're all excited for Vessel of Hatred.
Anyway, basically he's been asked a lot whether they're going to be supporting a PlayStation 5 Pro. And, there is some degree of sensitivity here because it's a Microsoft-owned company at this point. Anyway, Rod Ferguson has confirmed that, well, actually, he's saying, I'm happy to say that Diablo 4 and Vessel of Hatred will indeed be PS5 Pro enhanced. Very proud of our hard-working team to make this happen. More details at a later date. I kind of think they didn't really have a choice to do this. It just kind of makes sense. And actually, thinking about it, if they're going to be publishing on the PlayStation platform, it's mandatory to support the PS5 Pro with all future games. So I don't think they've even had a choice in the matter. But, it does bring about, once again, this sort of sensitive topic, which is that Xbox games are going to be looking better on PlayStation hardware than they do on Xbox hardware. Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Microsoft's just going to always bury the existence in any marketing, and it'll come out after the fact always. Like, they won't show off the next multi-platform game on PS5 Pro unless they really need to for a trailer, like for Indiana Jones or something like that. They will be always pushing the other versions in their marketing material. And so I don't think they have to even acknowledge the fact that another console can have a better looking version of the game, even though that is the case. As for what that means for Vessel of Hatred, I think there was scalability in the settings for ray tracing in the PC version of Diablo. And I think they could change those up for the console version. Make it even better. I know they had a GDC presentation on it, I believe, about like some of the scaling they brought in there to get it running on console. And there were things that they could do to make the shadows look better, I know, as well as the reflections. So maybe they could end up doing that as well for the PS5 Pro release, presuming it holds up CPU-wise, which is one of the reasons why ray tracing is expensive. I would also, the game had pretty good image quality on console. I don't think that was actually ever a problem. So I don't know how much PSSR really matters for this game. But I think just maybe upping the ray tracing or changing the modes, maybe if there was possible adding 120 hertz support would be great. But other than that, I don't think there's too much they should really need to do there.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts, John?
Well, that sounds like some beautifully PSR enhanced Vessel of Hatred there.
Right.
I don't know what they could do with it there, but it is interesting, and I'm not surprised that we'll see Microsoft-owned studios, taking advantage of the PS5 Pro. It makes sense to do it. It is required, as you say, or at least it seems that way. And there's really no reason not to. If you're already doing multi-platform stuff, you want your customers to have the best experience, right? You wouldn't want, these Microsoft games they're just not going to support the PS5 Pro. What kind of message would that send, right? It would just create like negativity around it for no reason. Even if not a lot of people own the PS5 Pro, it's still good to offer that support.
Okay. While you've been discussing that, I've been Googling death metal band names.
Mm.
Oh, there's
and I actually found an AI generator that will just make them up for you. Fire and Darkness, Dark Ember, Infernal Shadows, Flames of Oblivion, Cinders of Doom.
These all sound like real bands, though.
Yeah, Ebon Pyre, Chasm of Flames, Obsidian Blaze. I could go on.
We butter the bread with butter.
Death Chaos, Abyssal Carnage, Deathbound Fury, Mortuary Havoc. Man, amazing stuff there.
Not that it's death metal, but it's kind of hard to top. You just go back to the 90s, you got like Butthole Surfers.
Yeah, oh gosh, I hate those shock names from the 90s, to be honest with you. But I thought I heard about it before, and Ebon Pyre is actually a thing.
Really?
Nice.
Yes, but they're a merch thing for metal bands, like a merch provider. But I'd heard that before. I was like, Ebon Pyre. There we go.
What about Brutal Sphincter? That exists, or Aborted Hitler Cock. I wrestled a bear.
We're gonna need the
Toady Dancer Tap Dance
this.
Extravaganza. Oh man, some of these go places. What?
I'd still say Vessel of Hatred's pretty great though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, I think it is indeed time to move
Speaking
on.
of vessel of hatred, let's move on to our next topic.
Okay, this week, Intel announced that it has a new range of CPUs coming. I mean, we've known this for quite some time. There is a follow-up to the 14th generation Core chips. We're now in the Ultra era. We have the Core Ultra 200S series of processors. Just a name that just rolls off the tongue there.
No, it doesn't. Stop. It's so bad.
And interesting stuff. Obviously, we've got a Core i9. We got Core Ultra i9.
Ultra 9.
No, it's not Ultra 9. This is just really confusing me. We've got prices. They range from $589 USD for the Ultra 9 285K. And I mean, just scales down to Ultra 7 265K 394. Now, the interesting thing here is that we're looking at increased efficiency. We're looking at increases to performance in productivity applications, but the highlight has been on gaming, where Intel is basically flagging that this isn't going to be running that much faster, all told, versus the existing 14900K, but it will be offering interesting efficiency improvements. It's also saying that it's going to be lagging behind the X3D series of chips from AMD. And there's talk of like 5% differentials there. I'll be interested to see whether those figures hold up, because it seems somewhat implausible based on our current benchmarks. Alex, it's not really a great time for gamers in the CPU space at the moment. I guess on the one hand, we do already have extremely performant chips that are by and large double the performance or more than consoles. But it looks like the priorities of Intel and AMD are not really with gamers this generation.
They aren't.
And the gains are minimal.
And I'm curious to see what can be done about it in the coming future, because AMD's kind of snaking around issues in a smart way was adding the X3D chips there, which is the normal chip with just a chunk of cache on it. And for all those games that use a lot of memory and go out to memory often, it was a great benefit. And you see it just annihilating Intel chips sometimes. And I think that's a great thing that they've done. Intel, on the other hand, they've merged all their CPUs to be hybrid now. And I'm not exactly sure it is the winning method for gaming in the near future. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of games run worse with E-cores on. Intel has been coming up with methods and means to try and stop that. But it's not exactly successful with each and every release. Just John, you were playing Space Marine, right?
Yeah.
And you had to turn off E-cores to get double the performance. And it's like, that's not a great place to be in, I would say. And, I'm very happy to see them reducing power, which is a great concern, I would say, just for heat, especially, and stability of their chips, which died. I'm not exactly a big Intel fan at the moment, but if you can hear that. But I'm not exactly sure what the path forward is for gaming performance. I think they almost need like a gaming specific product, almost like the X3D, to really bring the competition out there. Maybe something that only is P-cores, really focuses on gaming performance, maybe even ups cache, just like they do on the AMD side of things. And it's just a great product in that aspect, because I don't know who exactly this product will entice right now at this moment, especially now that AMD announced that there's going to be greater longevity to the AM5 platform, which, maybe there's going to be even more future X3D chips there. Maybe there'll be changes to like what levels of DDR5 it supports with future revisions of motherboards. Everything looks like it's going in AMD's direction, in spite of the fact that I'm happy that they've brought power down here. But it still isn't enough to make me say to someone, get an Intel chip,
You've got to be looking at this from a kind of more holistic perspective, which is I'm not just using this for gaming. To kind of make this make sense. I mean, there has been talk of, I mean, they're talking about the power savings that you can make, and there's two responses I've got to that. Typically, gaming isn't CPU limited and shouldn't be CPU limited, so it won't be running flat out anyway. It will just be spiking when you are, occasionally CPU limited. That's the sort of ideal scenario. So the actual power savings there, it's not as if you're going to be getting gigantic power savings throughout the entire experience, I don't think. Secondly, again, this is the thing about the X3D chips. I mean, we've been looking at improving our benchmarks recently, and our benchmarks are including power measurements. The X3D chips are already extremely power efficient, and it turns out the reason why is that accessing memory is a hugely power intensive task. And if you're not actually leaving the chip, if you're just using the cache there, it's a lot more efficient anyway. So yeah, when we were looking at the X3D parts, we were surprised at how low the power consumption actually is. And it turns out that that's the reason. So there's a lot of good reasons for actually going down the X3D route as a gamer. Now, in terms of productivity and using your PC for other things, we've yet to see what AMD is coming up with for X3D on the 16 core parts. Right. Going to be very curious. I mean, there's been rumors that they're actually going to double up on the cache to actually add a chiplet and a cache for each cache per chiplet, so to speak, whereas it was just one cache on one CCD for the 7000 series. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But Intel finds itself in a bit of a weird position here. There's also rumors, I don't know how true they are, that certainly Arrow Lake S demands a new socket, which means a new board. Is that going to persist for the following generation? This is a crucial thing, because AMD is just hitting it out of the park by having a platform that lasts for years, multiple generations. There's a lot going on here. Now, there's some great stuff happening at Intel, but this is a classic example of how long it actually takes to turn things around. When you've got strong competition, you can't suddenly trash your architecture and just come up with new products. These things take years to develop. So I'm really going to be interested to see how this all plans out. So, Alex, what do you make of all of this?
Well, you were just talking about productivity as well there too, and maybe AMD's the one lagging feature of using an X3D chip is just less core speed, as well as usually the chip, if you're not getting one of those half 7950 X3D, you're having less core count in general. You're paying a lot more. But in the future, that might not be the case. There are rumors, I believe, of X3D being on both halves of the next releases, both CCDs, CCO?
CCDs? I think
CCDs?
they're CCDs at this point.
Yeah. Which would be it would be like having your pie and eating it too, as they say. It'd be so good, right? And I know a lot of people who just game on their PCs. We use PCs for productivity, but not everyone does. And I think capturing the core gamer market isn't really talking about how great it is to render things out from Premiere for people, unfortunately, and which is where Intel has kind of been doing better.
Yep.
So yeah, I really would love to see just a general. I know they're trying to unify stuff by putting these E-cores and everything, but man, games have just so rarely been better with E-cores. So rarely, and
they're more like L-cores. Am I right?
Yeah, it has been a loss so many times. I think when I did have the 12900K, I covered definitely probably, these are from my ass statistics here, but 9 out of 10 times probably turning off the E-cores would do nothing and lead to a better experience. So, which is a shame, because obviously you have these powerful CPUs, more powerful than the console CPUs in your PC, but devs just don't take advantage of them for anything reasonable. Games are not as wide as we would like them to be. So yeah, I think we need something different there at Intel from the CPU space in the coming to near future. Otherwise, there's not a great, other than maybe price performance for the mid-range parts, a good reason. And almost like AMD giving up on the RTX 4090, like competition like that. We talked about this about 2 weeks ago where AMD, that one gentleman from AMD said, we really shouldn't be focusing on competing on the ultra high end. Instead, we're going to focus on a market we can capture and one that it has like a large install base. And Intel not competing really greatly directly with X3D in spite of what these slides, which I don't really fully believe. Once again, having that performance crown is really important for mindshare, and not competing there, it's not great.
So John, you're on a 12900K.
Yeah, I am.
You do use your PC for both gaming and productivity.
Indeed.
I mean, the efficiency side of this must be compelling to you because you keep complaining about how hot your PC is.
Oh, 100%. I like this. I do think the efficiency stuff is actually good for those sorts of scenarios, but in theory, I would just like it to work better in terms of like game side of stuff when possible. And I guess like that, like you said, Alex, 9 times out of 10, turning off eCores doesn't usually actually do anything negative or positive, right? But there are occasionally issues there. And I guess in that case, it's more like pointing finger at the software makers rather than the hardware itself. And that's fundamentally where a lot of the eCore stuff becomes a problem when it's not managed correctly on the software side, and you end up with situations like that. But yeah, we are at this point though where like, I mean, heat management and power draw does start to matter more, I guess, just because modern PCs demand a lot of power, especially if you couple that with a high-end graphics card. You're pulling down so much energy through your power lines there. It's not that cheap to run. And obviously that also produces additional heat. And for processor intensive tasks that we often see, that does massively boost the heat coming out of these PCs. But I would, man, I don't know what the solution here is. It's interesting the direction they're taking. I do think, like somebody mentioned, and it wouldn't necessarily help me, but having a CPU line that specifically is designed for games versus more general purpose makes sense. But I don't know if Intel wants to.
There have been rumors of a P-core only product from Intel called Bartlett Lake. Seems to be coming the second half of 2025. And 12 P-cores is apparently the proposition there. What architecture it is, it could be interesting. But yeah, I'm going to be interested to see just how all of this testing pans out, because the X3Ds have done a number on AMD's 9000 lineup.
Yep.
And now we've got the 9000 X3Ds coming up. Just to cap off, we got this question from SJ33 in brackets Jake. Should we do it? 3, 2, 1. Hi Jake.
Hi Jake.
That works.
Hi all. Intel just announced Arrow Lake, and it's another CPU release with disappointing gaming performance. To be fair to Intel, I think it's fair enough that they've been honest about gaming performance from the start, unlike AMD with Zen 5. However, it does leave us in a position where the 5090 and potentially other upcoming GPUs will be CPU bottlenecked for a good few years. What does the team think about the current state of CPUs and both vendors struggling to meaningfully increase gaming performance? A Snapdragon missing their chance to capitalize. I don't know if ARM's going to be the answer at all there. But Jake is quite right in that there's a lot of scenarios now where you're basically CPU bottlenecked on a 4090 or even a 4080 or even lower. So that is a bit of a problem. But I do think, I don't know what you think about this, Alex, but it does seem to be a problem that NVIDIA is aware of, which is kind of why we got frame generation. One of the reasons we got frame generation in the first place. So the obvious solution is kind of more frame generation, assuming it works.
I don't know. It's so weird where like John just mentioned earlier, like there's obviously a large software issue going on now where, let's be honest, a 7800X3D should not be actually almost ever bottlenecking a 4090 within reason. Like we're talking about chips, not the 7800X3D, but like go to the Intel side or even the non-X3D parts from AMD. We're talking about like 5 gigahertz and more, like for single core speeds. Like, do we know what's even going on anymore in these games? Like the fact that you can be CPU bottlenecked with the ridiculous advances in CPUs ever since the 90s is it's almost, actually, it confuses me, especially since now GPUs have taken up so much more of the task of the frame, like over time. The, hardware TNL, then you go to compute shaders afterward, and now you're going to have like obviously mesh shaders too, like all of the fine grained culling. You're not going to need as much coarser culling on the CPU side necessarily in the future as well. There's a lot of stuff where I'm always like, man, why are we CPU limited? And it comes back to us having software that isn't really taking advantage of the multi-core aspects of our CPUs very well, and or spending cycles in a way that isn't so great. And you see that with all the games that are stuttering like crazy on PC. And Jake is very right. I think an RTX 5090 and any of the chips between it and the RTX 5080, and if they come into existence, are going to be very CPU limited in many games, even at 4K. And I don't think that's a great position to be in as a market. It's also, it just totally takes the utility out of these cards unless a game has path tracing sometimes, which is a bit sad. I don't think the answer is more frame gen, because I would rather the software side of things be solved rather than leaning on, quote unquote fake frames to solve the issue. I'd rather it be like the Doom Eternal style. This game can run at 500 FPS because we scale really well on the CPU. I'd really rather more games be like that. But now that takes a lot of move from both the IHVs and things like Unity and Unreal to make sure that the games, so that make sure that these engines actually take advantage of multi-core CPUs and don't waste cycles doing stupid stuff. I'm sorry. It's just like, like I've been slightly broken by releases sometimes.
Alex, to be fair, like a lot of the engineers I've spoken to over the past few years, they all express this feeling that software itself is getting far slower and more inefficient than ever. Like there's just so many inefficiencies inherent to software these days, whether it's the OS level, programs like Premiere, as we know. Like there's just so many inefficiencies buried in there that's just like requiring so much more hardware to push through than it realistically should. And that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, you get that feeling sometimes in games to a certain degree, but I definitely feel it in Windows and in Premiere and all these other kind of things, just across the web as well too. So I think there needs to be some sort of change in software paradigm, whether, I don't know, APIs also need to get better, because DX12 has not been the solver for CPU related issues, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how this goes, because if you think about what AMD did with X3D, I mean, the thinking behind X3D is kind of not really great. They're seeing that a lot of games are not, are moving out of cache memory into system memory, causing a lot of lag. The solution there is just to throw a big bunch of silicon at the problem with a massive cache, and that increases the performance, right? When in actuality, you would hope that games would actually be a bit more efficient than that and actually stay within cache more frequently.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of strange. I mean, what next? X4D? I mean, who knows at this point? Okay, that's that. Let's move on. I'm just going to kick off this one with a supporter question from Big Man Upstairs. Gentlemen, let's get down to brass tacks. John, did you see anything interesting on your travels that you'd like to share with the group? Now, you spent a couple of weeks in Japan. You went to the Tokyo Game Show. You did a big bunch of visits with game developers. You've seen some great games. So I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, TGS was the first sort of big day there for this kind of stuff. We saw a lot of different developers and games there. The first one that really grabbed me, of course, though, as you do, I went over to see Earthian, the current version of it, which is the game being made by Ancient, including Yuzo Koshiro, back at the helm. It's a proper Mega Drive game, and they had it running on a BrownCon there, or a CRT, hooked up, ready to play, and I threw on the headphones and played it, and man, it is sublime. Like, they just, everything about it, from the timing of when things happen, the combination of the music, the visuals, it feels awesome. Seeing this running on a real Mega Drive, I think this game's going to hit big. I'm super excited for it. So yeah, definitely one to keep an eye out for. But yeah, the TGS itself was very rewarding for me because obviously I've been working hard on Japanese language studies and practicing, and I was able to basically do the whole show relying entirely on Japanese, including the PS5 Pro meeting, which was great.
Wow.
So everything went real smooth. I was very pleased with that. And that really opened doors in terms of just being able to talk with developers and just people and places we went, and like really, you know, kind of you remove that sort of like layer of like, you know, obfuscation that happens when two people don't speak the same language, and there's like interpretation and figuring things out. So that was fantastic. Just being able to chat with them. Like, again, the guys from Tango Project were there, just walking up to Iwatsuki-san, who is the composer for that's been doing all their games and also worked back with, you know, on all the old ones as well. And it was great to just chat with him, and also chatted with some of the engineers from Q Games. I have some cool stuff coming up there. And yeah, so the show was a blast. I would say it wasn't too bad on the business day either. Not horribly crowded enough, but you know, public days turn into Gamescom where it's just like wall to wall people, which is not my thing. But then, so some other game things I finally went to the Mikado in, Ikebukuro, which is where we stayed. I didn't know they had a Mikado there, and they had, which is a game center, right? It's an arcade. So it's 3 stories of lots of classic arcade games. So one of the games they had there I'd never seen before was elevator action, Death Parade. And unlike classic elevator action, it is a light gun shooter, like a Time Crisis game, but it has a twist. It has a working elevator.
What?
Sorry, elevator doors. So they actually simulate the behavior and the real elevator doors. So you have a giant, tall, like looks like 65 or larger monitor that you're shooting at, which is in a vertical orientation. They've got working elevator doors in front of it, and then another smaller monitor above it, and 5.1 sound, by the way. So there's speakers hanging over you and all kinds of stuff. And you have, in addition to your light gun, you've got the controls for raising and lowering the elevator and closing the door. And there's like moments where you're like going in and out of these elevators, and you're controlling it there. But what I love is that they just simulate the motion of the elevator doors to such a realistic fashion. So like if you're like running back to the elevator and you get in and you slam the door shut, enemies are firing at you still. Like they simulate the doors like like rattling around as they're getting hit with bullets and everything. It's freaking cool. It's a very fun thing.
So this is a physical.
It's a physical elevator door. Like not
would be an awesome,
in front of the screen.
peripheral.
What's that?
It's huge.
This would be an awesome console peripheral.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Oh, my
elevator
God.
door.
The elevator door for home.
It's something Sega would have done in the Dreamcast era, for sure.
It does feel like that, yes. That was rad.
This is the last hope for our console. We need to release the door.
Exactly. I also spent a bunch of time playing Sega Rally in the arcade again, which is, you know, you just can't go wrong with Sega Rally. It's always good. But next to it was Thrill Drive 3, which I'd never seen in person before. And boy, does it kind of suck compared to the earlier ones. But it does have a seatbelt mechanic. You actually put on the seatbelt, and then as you crash and get into accidents, it like simulates, it like pulls on you and tugs on you in a weird way. It's visceral. But unfortunately, there's no seatbelt mechanic for home. They didn't sell that peripheral.
PlayStation seatbelt is the future.
Mhm.
And the
PlayStation
PlayStation
seatbelt.
door.
Exactly. So that, that arcade was a blast. We played a ton of games there. I went there multiple times with different friends and everything. We also had a shopping day where we went out to Chiba with friend of the show, Matt Papa. He took us in his car and we went to all the hard offs way out in the countryside away from Tokyo and got a lot of good stuff. Lots of fun games there. That was a good old time.
Nice.
Then, there was studio visits. So as I did last year, we went back to M2 and Tenodai, which they're kind of way out there, but it's not too much to share this time. We got to see more Alesta Branch, which is still in the works, of course. But it was mostly like a chance to chat with the developers, which again, this year I was finally more easily able to do that. And it was great with all those guys. Although one of the younger developers who came in, I was chatting with him about some stuff, and I brought up, we went to another place. We had a PC-98 looking game with us of Puyo Puyo, in that it's like a big plastic box that sort of clasps shut. It's very cool. He commented on it, and I said, "Oh yeah, we got that there." And he's like, "Oh yeah, my grandpa collects those." And I was just like, "Oh no." I felt ancient. So yeah, that's a thing. But no, that M2 was lovely. It was so nice of them to have us out there again. It's just like a crazy fun house of stuff. They've got that one room just full of arcade gear, and they've, all the stuff that they do. And I think they should have a lot of cool stuff next year as well. They recently did the Castlevania collection. The DS games, plus they remade Haunted Castle, which was the not great arcade game that became a now great. It's basically Castlevania Rebirth 2. And they had Chibi Tech, who we got to meet as well. Excellent chiptune artist, amazing. She did all the music for it, and it's awesome. So that was cool. We also went to D4, as they're called, which is a company that specializes in releasing PC 88 and 98 games on modern platforms. So like classic Japanese computer games that are otherwise would have been very inaccessible. We got a chance to go over there and chat with him for a while with the CEO of D4. They have a really nice office in Ginza, which was pretty cool to see. And yeah, I really like what they're doing, and they have a lot of properties and IP and developer rights. Like they own all the Compile back catalog, for instance. And then we got a chance to go over to Sega. Audi helped set this up, of course. And we got to meet the legendary Mitsuyoshi-san, the composer who's done so much for Sega, but is obviously known for singing Daytona music. And then also Kobayashi-san we got to meet, who was the composer for Phantasy Star Online, among other projects. And it was great to be able to catch up, especially talking to Kobayashi-san. Like he joined Sega like right before the Dreamcast launched, so he was kind of just getting info about how the Dreamcast coalesced and all that. It's super cool stuff. It was really great to speak with them, and we had a really nice time there. So just seeing all those guys out there, it was a pleasure. And then on top of that, we met up with other game composers throughout the time and chatted with them and got to hear some great stories of working on old hardware back in the day. And that I enjoyed picking their brains and various sound modules and the different chips and hearing their different techniques, as well as what they're doing today. I also got a chance to visit the headquarters for Line, which is the messaging app that's now, I don't know if you guys use it, but it's very popular in Japan. I use it all the time. I got invited by a friend there and went to like the Friends and Family Day. So got to see a bunch of cool stuff there. And it was nice to see their office as well. So that was fun. And then lastly, I guess we did robot shopping. A friend of mine is like looking at different robots. So she's like, oh yeah, we should go check out some of these. There's like the Lavabot.
Robots?
There's like, I forget all the names of them, but they're cool. The little Lavabot is like It's like an animal. Like it rolls. It has like eyes that look, it has touchable surface, but it actually is warm, like a living creature. You walk in, it reacts to you and it follows you around, and you can pick it up. And if you hold it, it'll like fall asleep and everything. And I'm just like, it's very interesting, kind of futuristic stuff. It's a world that Richard has jumped into in the past with the iBo.
Yeah, I have the original two iBos, ERS 110 and 111, I think, from memory. But the first two original iBos. And they're interesting devices, very, very primitive by today's standards. But, they were trying things like, a certain type of AI to it. They did, quote unquote, learn. It was quite fun. They would just sort of trundle about, kick their ball, go back to their charging station when the battery would last maybe an hour, less than that even. It was kind of fun, and it kind of, I think, spoke to some of the realities of living in Japan, or where it actually applies to the whole world at this point, which is that, a lot of people just don't have time for animals, and keeping an animal is pretty much cruel if it's just sat on its own all day.
Right.
So this was kind of like an automated alternative.
Yeah.
You actually told me there was a PS2 game that was related to
I need to remember what the name is, but there is one PS2 game that actually allows you to connect to the iBo. So if you find your old iBos, at some point, we'll have to see about trying that and see how they communicate.
Because the brain as such was on a memory stick.
Oh, wow.
And there was specific software that would just, put new software onto the memory stick, and the iBo did new things. So maybe that's the way they did it.
It's possible.
I'm not sure.
Because the modern ones sort of leverage AI stuff that's been happening now.
Yeah.
And they're a lot more advanced in terms of what they can do and the way they react. It's honestly shockingly impressive to see them all together. Just the way that they act. It's like, it really does seem like you're looking at like some sort of living being. And when we talked to one of the shop clerks for one of them, I mean, they very specifically gave that use case of like, some people would like a pet, like a pet, but like if you live in a small little flat in Tokyo, you don't have enough time to like take care of them. It would be cruel to keep an animal in such conditions, right? So this kind of gives you a bit of that experience. It's fun to play with, without the cruelty part. Which, hey, I'm all for that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that stuff was...
you heard it here first, folks. DF is against animal cruelty.
We are against animal cruelty. Be kind to your animals.
Get your pets spayed and neutered. Is that the usual thing that people say?
We know Rich has a cute little guy there.
I have a cute dog, yeah.
Dogatle Foundry.
But I work from home.
Exactly, so it's fine.
He's always in the background.
He always has your attention.
My wife is at home as well. Yeah, absolutely. So this was like a 2-week visit, right, John? You managed to cram in like a huge amount.
Dude, it was wall-to-wall action, wall-to-wall stuff. And this is just the surface. There was so much other stuff that we did throughout. I made a lot of great contacts, lots of people I'll be reaching out to again. It was extremely rewarding. So...
Brilliant.
I had a great time.
Awesome stuff.
I'll be back next year for a longer period of time even. So
Coolio.
Okay, so that's the end of the news and the main discussion points for this show. Let's move straight on to Supporter Q&A, the part of the show where every week on our Patreon I ask our supporters to offer up suggestions for topics, reactions to the topics we know we're going to be doing, and to pose new questions. Let's tackle this one straight away. There's actually 2 questions, so I'm going to roll it into one. And let's begin. First of all,
yes.
Seven Sand says, "Hi, Digital Foundry Squad!" ! We aren't a military unit, just point that out. A rumor was reported last week that Sony had already shown an early prototype of the PlayStation 6 at the Tokyo Game Show back in September, assuming the PS6 will launch by the end of 2027. I'm wondering what could be shown 3 years early from launch. What do you think? Keapora asks, "Hi, founders!" ! As for the rumors that Sony showed some people an early prototype of PS6 during TGS, don't you think that's a bit early, considering the PS5 Pro hasn't even been officially released yet? I also feel that generations as we know them are over, and at the moment I don't see a future where anyone really needs to upgrade to a future PS6 at launch. It's more likely that almost all early PS6 games will run well on PS5, even better on the Pro. I think we learned a good lesson with the transition to PS4 to PS5, didn't we? Can you see a significant graphical upgrade for the PS6 in just 3 to 4 years compared to what the PS5 Pro will be capable of? Well, you were at TGS, John. Personally,
Yes.
I find the idea that platform holders would roll up to a major event with hardware kind of hard to believe. Surely these briefings would take place at their headquarters. I don't know. What do you think about all of this PS6 stuff anyway?
I mean, PS6 or whatever the next generation will be is most certainly in development, right? These consoles take a long time to make, but I doubt that they're in any position right now to be. I'm sure there's partners involved as always, but it's like it's probably a very tight, closed off circle at the moment. I'd assume most of Sony was focused on most of the hardware team was focused on getting the PS5 Professional finished and out the door. And then, they've moved on from there. And who knows about when it would launch? They're saying end of 2027.
Well, that's the rumor.
That's
an
rumor.
assumption.
Even if it was, though, like
there.
you don't really see new hardware like this until it's within spitting distance of launch, right? Like, we're not going to see anything.
Right.
We're not going to be hearing. There may be leaks, but we're not going to be hearing anything concrete, and certainly nothing official until it's like within, like, say, 9 months of launch, I would say.
Right.
So,
Alex?
I mean, yeah, I would doubt they would show it off there, and I imagine it's going to be running on maybe, well, I don't know what process node it's going to run on actually, but I imagine the technology that is built up for it has yet to have been taped out. So it'd be just like emulating aspects of it that you'd imagine in the future with other chips that are currently available, I imagine. And so about that, that's really all I have to say. I don't put much stock in that rumor, and I have no idea where it would have started.
Yeah, about that. Well, look, here's the thing, right? You can have technology today and, it can be ultra powerful and it will be beyond what a console does today. AMD, I mean, it was, I think there was a recent news. In fact, we discussed it on DF Direct about Intel trying to get the PS6 contract, but apparently AMD got it. Well, look, 4 years from now, I'm pretty sure that AMD and Sony would be able to postulate what kind of hardware they could produce at that point, and maybe they could use today's components to provide a kind of ballpark, very, very early approximation of what that kit is going to do. Whether you would then take that kit, pack it all up and take it to the Tokyo Game Show is another thing, particularly when your headquarters is in Tokyo already. Is another thing entirely. But I just think that there are certain things, certain trends that we can see that are happening in gaming that just makes sense for PlayStation 6, and they're all in the PS5 Pro, right? In some early form. Obviously, the race to just beef up silicon, beef up GPU with more transistors isn't happening anymore. PS5 Pro proves that out. We're going to be seeing a shift to AI features, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think the PS5 Pro is essential in getting that hardware out there, getting people developing for it, and perhaps doing things more than AI upscaling. So, I think that's the future. I think that's where PlayStation 6 is going to be going. It's where PC is going. It's where Microsoft is almost certainly going to be going. I think they can obviously talk about what they're potentially doing for PlayStation 6. Do you actually need a prototype hardware that is in any way representative of final PS6 hardware at this point? No, you don't. Prototype can mean anything. So, I'm not poo-pooing the whole thing as such. But, there are obviously discussions going on. It's pretty obvious that there's going to be a PlayStation 6. Because, it just kind of makes sense. It's the entire foundation of the Sony business model. Microsoft, we know they're in on Gen 10 as well. How that actually manifests, yet to be seen. But yeah, in terms of whether we need a PlayStation 6, well, that's kind of like up to Sony, really. I do think that this whole cross-gen thing with PS4 and PS5 has probably been quite instructional, though. Phasing out PlayStation 5 generation is probably going to be even more difficult than PS4.
Yes.
What do you think about that, actually, Alex? This because you're all in on the idea that we're just going to move on to iterative iterations, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think PS6 is going to be different enough to offer some sort of different experience to those who are early buyers, hopefully. I'd hope for their sake. But I do think the reality and the cost of making software is going to be so that, and even just making the hardware itself, I actually don't know how cheap it's going to be. Like the PS5 was relatively, even then that was more expensive than a PS4 was at launch. So I do think the rolling generation will just cannot be there. You can't make a AAA game for 120 million US dollars or more and then sell it to only 1 to 2 million people within like the first year or something like that. You need to be this is not the returns that companies like Sony want. So yeah, I think it's going to be cross-gen here on out for a long time, Rich.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. This one from Anxiously Chronoed Figured. Hey, gentlemen, exclamation point. God of War, the Greek collection remasters have been rumoured now. I don't think we have ever seen so many remasters in gaming history released in such a short time, especially from one publisher. Do you consider this generation to be the worst in terms of fresh IPs or even good quality new games? I know we have Astrobot, but come on, exclamation point.
Right.
And Sony is still the dominant player on the market, which doesn't give me too much hope for the future. Cheers all, exclamation point. I think at this point, the only sort of classic God of War game you can play on the PlayStation 5 is the remaster of God of War 3.
Yep.
Which came out on PlayStation 4 and obviously just runs on PlayStation 5. I kind of get the point that Anxiously Chronoed Figured is making here, John, but I kind of would like to see the Greek collection.
Well, they're actually wrong in terms of saying that this is the worst generation for remasters. That's absolutely false. It's the PS3 era. As soon as the publishers realized that they could re-release HD remasters of games, the floodgates exploded. There were so many HD remaster releases that generation. Like they just kept coming. But I think the reason for the perception of it being the worst is that clearly they are having a difficult time getting new original software out the door. And this seems to be a general game development problem that everyone's facing to some degree. The platform holders, especially Sony and Microsoft, are definitely facing this. Getting big first-party stuff out the door is just taking more and more time and money than it ever did before. And as a result, like they're limited in terms of how much software they have. And I think that's where all these re-releases factor into it. It's just like, you know, it's an easier, cheaper way to get more software out there for people that may not have played it. And I'm not really, and that's the thing. It's a separate issue. I'm not against these sort of re-releases inherently, just because like, as long as their release doesn't prevent the release of an original game. Right. And I think in most cases, they're picking teams to do the development work on the stuff that are specifically there to make these re-releases. It's not so much that, oh, we're not getting a sequel or a new game in a series because of a re-release. I don't think that's really the case. And as long as it's not the case, it's fine. I think the bigger issue really is just like there's not enough new software from the first parties right now. But yeah, for this collection, I mean, I can't say I care that much, but I guess why not? You know,
well, it's not on PC for starters, which I think is a good reason to do.
Yeah, if they do this on modern platforms and PC like that, then yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. I also think, you know, in terms of singling out Sony, I mean, Nintendo basically brought the entire Wii U slate over to Switch. You know,
yeah.
So you know, let's, and I think that generally was a good thing. Alex, what do you think about this?
I think this one makes more sense than almost every other one that's been announced more recently.
Simply because the games are older and less available?
Older, less available. Mainly that, yeah. I mean, they're technically available somewhere. Like if you just play them on an emulator, right? We've talked about PS2 emulation on the channel quite a lot. But I think getting them out there, getting them on PC would be nice. Though I do wonder once again about the strange priorities. I think there was a rumor that this is like Nixie's involvement, and this is and this is like the Greek collection. So it's all these like PSP games, which would presumably be emulated. I don't think they'd be rewritten to be x86 exe natives. I don't think so. Like that seems like a lot of work. Like what if people want things like The Last Guardian and Bloodborne to be better in a technical state on a modern stuff, and bringing out the Greek collection and using Nixie's resources for that again, if that is the truth. It seems like once again, like what is going on at Sony that they just ignore that Bloodborne thing? They just really ignore it. But yeah, I'm fine with the Greek collection. I'm not actually so angry about it.
You're not angry. That's good.
I'm not angry.
You're
about
not as angry as Kratos.
I'm not as Kratos. The Greek collection.
Absolutely.
How could he?
I don't really know what to make about this. I'd quite like to see the Greek collection as such. I think there is an accessibility problem, as long as they don't. What was the fourth God of War game? Ascension.
Oh, I called it Judgment. I'm thinking of Gears of War.
God of War Ascension, yes. And I've literally just proved it's quite an overlooked game.
It is,
and I'd love to see it because it was actually really, really technologically great. So I'd like to see that one as well. Let's move on. Next question, aliasing anonymous. A tech leaker claimed Thursday that Nvidia is considering 5080 pricing from $1,199 to $1,499. Even if the 5080 is roughly on par with the 4090, just with less VRAM, those prices verge on quote-unquote turd in punch bowl territory. How would you see the market reaction to a price over $1,200? It's worth pointing out that the best and most reliable actual tech leaker is Copite 7 Kimmy, who just dismissed that in 2 words: totally fake. I think we are in a sort of strange and unwelcome reality that, and we have to accept it really, that there's always been the assumption that when a new generation of graphics hardware comes along, it's going to be both cheaper and a lot more performant. Last time we saw that was with Ampere RTX 3000. I think we'd love to see it again. The question is really, whether it's actually viable at this point in the world of the $700 PS5 Pro and the $500 PS5, which, it hasn't actually gone down in price that much since launch, if at all. I mean, the concept that a 5080 is going to be $1,200 to $1,500, it isn't welcome, is it, Alex?
I take no stock in this rumor.
Yeah.
But if we were just going to talk about possible prices, I would not want a RTX 5080 to be... I didn't want the RTX 4080 to be its price.
Yes.
So I'll just apply that logic here where I think...
Yes.
I'm just going backwards here. I don't think that would be... I don't think it being above 1K USD is great for the market necessarily. The specs are not shouting at me and like the RTX 3080 was, where it's like, this is a great buy, right? Based upon the leaked specs yet. I still need to be convinced about what this thing can do before I start talking about prices. I just don't take any stock in this rumor. at this moment.
The only thing from Copite7 Kimmy beyond totally fake was I don't believe there will be a significant price increase for RTX 5090, which kind of in turn suggests that the stack will be similarly priced. I think there were mistakes obviously made with 4080 pricing,
Yes.
which were to an extent rectified with the 4080 Super, which was effectively a price cut because the performance was like literally 1 or 2% better. It's all going to be about the perception of value. I mean, I think that we're going to get some new features. I think they're going to be doubling down on all of the stuff that we've seen already, and it will be better. I think that, like it or not, RTX 40 series has actually been phenomenally successful, even though there was this massive pushback on pricing. The worst product, I think, in the entire stack is probably the 4060 Ti. And yet there it is on the Steam hardware survey in the top 10. So,
Man,
you know, there's kind of like negative reaction to pricing and then what people are actually doing when they go out and upgrade their GPU. And what can I say? You know, the poor pricing seemed to have prevailed. It's not particularly great. But, you know, who knows what we'll see. If we go back in history, I think the Turing launch was similarly controversial with its extremely high pricing. I mean, at the time, I think the 2070 was like $530, which was like nuts. Things were corrected with Ampere. Will we see that correction again? I'd like to see it. Who knows at this point? I do think, you know, with the announcement that Jensen's going to be keynoting CES 2025, that all but confirms that we're going to be seeing those products in that time frame. Do you have any opinion on this, John?
God, I hope it's not. I hope it is fake, because those prices are. That's insane, man. Like, prices have been steadily increasing on these things anyway, but like, this is just getting into like ridiculous territory at this point. And we were just talking about how everything seems to be these days seem to be limited by CPUs as well. It just feels like they're forging ahead into a future that trying to make the future while nobody around them can keep up right now, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you know, new graphics cards. It's always exciting for us.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually.
Usually.
Okay, let's move on. This question from Crashsune Animations. I hope I've got the pronunciation right there. Welcome back, John! Exclamation point. Thoughts on Lollipop Chainsaw Repop? Question mark! Exclamation point. Thanks, crew! Exclamation point. I put this one in, John, because we were originally going to be discussing this as a DF Direct topic, but we couldn't get capture because it was so bad you'd actually refunded it.
Yeah, correct.
In fury. But it's a good topic for Q&A. Tell us your thoughts on Lollipop Chainsaw Repop.
So as a result, I haven't actually kept up with it. I don't know if they delivered the promised patch yet, but it's a gosh darn mess, is what I would say. So the original game was a Grasshopper manufacturer joint, similar time frame, if I recall, around like Killer. Not Killer is Dead. It was before that as well. But Shadows of the Damned. But it's just it's a silly, goofy action game that was really fun back in the old generation, but it didn't run great. I played it on PS3 on the triple. It's an Unreal Engine 3 game. It didn't run great. It was lots of screen tearing. It was okay, but you know, it's the triple. What are you going to do? That's what it was. So I was actually excited that they decided to do a re-release of this game on modern platforms, because like, here's this chance to just have a proper smooth version of the game. You get full 60 FPS or more. Clean up the image quality, basically solve those problems. But instead, what we got is an Unreal Engine 5 rebuild of the game filled with bugs. The performance on PS5 is not good enough. And from what I've read, the PC version is also stupidly heavy for reasons nobody knows. It looks worse than the original in many ways. I had to boot up the PS3 version just to double check, and like, my memory was not wrong. The PS3 versions, like the art, PS360, I should say, the artwork, the way things are lit, it's just, it's very UE3, but it just looks better. And the art here, the way it fits into UE5, it doesn't work. It just looks weird. Like the lighting and the shading, it's missing fog effects, and just everything about it doesn't look right to my eye. And I don't really like the updated visuals that much. And as a result, the whole thing is just kind of, it feels like it just wasn't finished, basically. It's very unpolished, buggy, doesn't run as well as it should. It's not always an upgrade visually. And all of these things come together to make it just like me wonder, like, what the heck happened here? I was not happy with this version. If we had received proper like review code, and it's pretty obvious why we would not have, then maybe it would have been worth the video, if not for my trip. But because putting this kind of stuff on blast, I think, is important, because it is fundamentally letting fans down. Now, They did respond to this, and it sounds like they are hopefully trying to do something, but like, come on. You guys knew it was in this condition. Like, nobody was saying, yeah, we got to get this game out right in the market right now for it to be hot. Like, it was released before it was ready. Clearly, they did a bad job with the release version. That also means if there's any disc version out there, I'm not sure if there is, there might be, that it's probably going to suck too. It's going to be limited to that version 1.0, totally broken, ugly version. I think this game's even on Switch, and I can't even imagine what that version must look like. Probably worse than the PS Triple version, if I had to wager.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, what a bummer, right? Like, it just, I'm so bummed out that they screwed this up, because this was from a good era of Grasshopper games. They were doing a lot of cool stuff at the time, and I hope that the Shadows of the Damned remaster remake thing, which I think has a different studio involved, turns out better than this. That was also originally a UE3 game. So we'll see what happens, man. I don't know. So yeah,
I don't know. It's starting to sound though like a lot of releases these days don't have super positive launch. I don't know how to explain it. Reception as well as technical prowess. Like, there's always like a large patching period, and I don't think this is very sustainable for people's wits, at least game players' wits, because every game you just have to wait for patches now. Like, this sounds like an awful situation, John.
And you shouldn't have to. That's the thing. Like, this is an old game that was brought back, and like, why do you bring back games and then do a bad job at it? Like, it boggles the mind. It's not the same. It's better than this, but like, I just sampled the Until Dawn re-release, which I think Tom is doing a video on it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we discussed it last week on the Direct as well. It looked like a train wreck.
I within the first 10 minutes, I'm just like, what happened here? Like, this is terrible. It's completely technically messed up. Like, my eyes are seeing this, and I cannot believe what I'm seeing. Like, how you can say this is acceptable to release. You're bringing back another game, and in that case, you could play it at 60 FPS on a PS5 in its original form anyway. And so releasing something that's all stuttery and inconsistent like that, it's not acceptable at all. And that's absolutely the case with Lollipop, which apparently it has had at least a patch so far, but it definitely does not seem to have fixed many of these issues. So yeah. That's that.
Bit of a table flipping scenario for you there, don't you?
I'm not against re-releases of games, but if you're gonna do it right, is my point.
Right.
Like, this kind of stuff is unacceptable to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to that 4060 Ti thing that I was talking about earlier, it was like, well, in some respects it was worse than the 3060 Ti. So you shouldn't be producing an improved product that is in any way worse than the one that preceded it. And this applies to game remasters as well, really. If you're actually going to be making the product worse, what's the point?
Is this the equivalent of shrinkflation in video games? If you know anything about shrinkflation, it's like you buy a bag of chips and it has like 20 grams less chips in it now.
It is. Exactly
it's like the equivalent. They re-released it. It's a shiny new package, but oh gosh, it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't play it, did you, Alex?
Which one, Lollipop?
Yep.
No, I did not
I
play
would,
it.
I would love to
I don't
see
have a
your
great
PC
fondness for the
impressions.
I mean, occasionally that should probably be something we add into Direct if there was infinite amount of time, would be like the latest release on PC and just like 30 minutes, just talk about what I experienced. It's usually probably would warn people off a lot of games, actually.
I was just thinking, poor Unreal Engine 5, you'd have been furious.
Oh my God. They did port it to UE4 though, didn't they, John? Lollipop? It looks kind of UE4 like.
Yeah, I mean it's considered, it's like Unreal 5.3 that it's using, but it's obviously not using any
Unreal 5
any Unreal 5 specific features. But here's the thing about Unreal 5 is, like, even if you're not using any of those extra features, there is a performance cost of just using Unreal 5 over UE4. So there's already a performance overhead that you're dealing with. Just shifting to the engine. So, man,
okay,
what a mess.
I think we've covered. I think we
got it. We got it. We're good.
Let's move on. Let's try to relax. Okay, this question comes from Tree Fingers with two N's. Rich double exclamation point. We share a dream! Exclamation point. A remaster / remake of Assassin's Creed Unity! Exclamation point. Let's pretend for a moment that dreams do come true. What would be some key improvements you'd like to see? Which modern techniques would be most transformational? The baked lighting was superb for its time, but RT lighting in Unity? Exclamation point. Question mark. Thoughts on the rest? We could get a lot of mileage and multiple years of use with it back in the DF CPU / GPU bench suite. Good point.
Yeah.
Thanks as always! Exclamation point. Cheers! Exclamation point. And what's this, Alex? Can you pronounce it?
I said it's got an umlaut on it, which you wouldn't usually say, but Prost.
Okay.
Like,
Can
it's
you
like
explain
cheers.
that bit?
Prost.
Cheers. Okay, so it's
Prosit.
fair enough.
It's Latin.
He's just trying to accommodate you.
He's accommodated. Oh, well, nice. I feel welcomed. That's nice. Unity.
Yes, Unity. Well, I believe they're doing a Black Flag remaster. But obviously, AC Unity, it's kind of like almost, what could I say? Whenever we produce a video on AC Unity, does at least 200,000 views. And it's simply because it came at a moment in time where Ubisoft pushed technology way beyond the capabilities of the consoles of the time.
Oh, yeah.
The ambitions were staggeringly high, and I think maybe the actual final consoles didn't quite deliver the horsepower that it needed. You can play it on PC, but there are issues with the PC version at the moment in terms of LODs and whatnot. It's actually going to be approaching its 10-year anniversary this year. I'd love to see, RT lighting. I'd love to see, some of the gameplay mechanics updated. Don't think it's going to happen. Would love to see it. I would love to see it restored to both the GPU and CPU bench suites. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you go back to it now, some of the things that aren't so awesome in it do show. Like, I would say, the character models were amazing, but now if you look at them, they're not like they're way above a lot of the current Assassin's Creed stuff. But they could be better. I'd also say, like, if you're in indoor areas, it's pretty easy to notice how, like, the cube maps are misaligned with a lot of everything. And getting that all to be per pixel and great, it would definitely change a lot of the visuals. But what I would really like to see is just those crowds again. An Assassin's Creed game where there's just crowds and crowds of people, AI actors that you have to blend in between, like that original Assassin's Creed promise. That is the thing that makes the game look still really cool. And the thing bringing it down is the aforementioned level of detail where people turn into, cardboard cutouts of people pretty close to the camera, actually, if you look.
Yeah, and so do the buildings.
The buildings. Yeah, it's a shame that like, even just a re-release to patch up those things would put this in a tier, still above a lot of modern releases in some aspects. I'd also maybe like to see the combat being a little less automated and be a bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say like the modern Assassin's Creed games, but something different than the old style of like semi-automated combat that Assassin's Creed had. Yeah.
And it had a co-op as well, astonishingly,
it did.
Which we've never tested, and I've never actually played, and I'd love to.
Yeah, I never have played it as well.
Video opportunity, if it still works.
It should do on Xbox for sure. I don't see why it wouldn't. And PC, I don't see why it wouldn't, but maybe we should check it out. John, thoughts?
I mean, yeah, this would be tricky for them, I think, just going back to this old version of Anvil and like re-releasing something like this. There's obviously many challenges there, and I don't know. It got a negative reception at the time, primarily due to the bugs and issues that it had at launch. But
yeah,
I do think it's held up rather gracefully, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And kind of like you said, Alex, I'd be happy with like a re-release that basically solves its current issues, like gets rid of the LOD problems, and adds in some modern image treatment features, and anything else on top of that would be the cherry on top. But I do think it's still a stunningly beautiful game. And it's a beautiful recreation of Paris that's cool to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our final question. This one from Ernesto Gonzalez. Greetings, DF Overlords! ! Is John secretly building a CRT TV museum? Keep up the excellent work! ! I think my only issue with this question is the word secretly. You're doing it in plain sight, John.
Yeah, nothing secret about it, right? I mean, yeah, I do have a collection of these, and I have them all.
You've just bought a new one, or rather an older one.
I obtained an old one,
yes,
that somebody was going to get rid of, and it's a really nice 29-inch, or I guess tube size, whatever, Sony Trinitron that I wanted to breathe new life into.
Right.
I've just been dabbling with some consumer sets as well, because I have mostly pro monitors, and it's fun to look at consumer sets as well, because they do have a distinctly different appearance compared to the pro monitors, because they have a much lower line count. So it's it's more in line with what the games might have looked like at the time, and it's it's a nice one. But yeah, I do kind of have a lot of CRTs set up throughout the house in various different setups for different purposes. From retro PC stuff to like a Mister setup with like one in Tate mode and a place to hook up arcade boards. And then, in here as well. And I sometimes rotate them around, and I love using CRTs. What can I say?
Mm-hmm.
And I also look out for ones that look cool on camera, because I like to use this stuff in DF retro videos. And, sometimes that actually just being able to film it, you can make some cool shots. So.
Have you got a Wager? That's the question.
No. So in recent times, outside of PC monitors, which generally are the pro ones, I'm not a big fan of flat CRTs anymore, because unless they're like the really high-end pro or monitor grade tubes, flat tubes tend to have a lot of issues with geometry and convergence, which is extremely annoying.
That's interesting.
Right, because it requires a lot more work from the gun and everything to like get this beam precisely aimed on a flat tube versus a curved one. So
makes sense.
The circuitry to do that tends to be in those really expensive pro monitors and or PC monitors. So flat tubes are okay in that range, but also flat tubes become increasingly more difficult based on size. So like a larger TV screen, it's a flat tube. The larger you go, the worse. You're going to have many problems in the corners usually, because it's just really hard to deflect the beam up in a way that's like even and precise around there. So also most flat tubes tend to be outside of the first few round of them, especially in Europe. In Europe, they all went to 100 hertz, which sucks. 100 hertz processing, because that's designed to eliminate flicker, and it basically relies on like a internal image processing to double the image so that it gets rid of the flicker. But it also means that if you're playing like a 60 FPS game, you get a ghost image behind everything, like a double image effect, which is exactly
why you don't want to be using a CRT?
Exactly. You get a CRT to avoid this stuff. So having that reintroduced is terrible. And then in the US, everything went to like ED and HD TV, and those TVs stopped supporting proper 15 kilohertz input. So if you're inputting older 240p sources or interlace stuff, it has to deinterlace it, which again has a negative impact on image quality and also adds some latency to it. So I'm not a big fan of those types of screens.
Okay.
So,
So what would the CRT museum consist of? I'm assuming lots and lots of Sony Pro monitors.
I mean, it would be plenty of those, but also I like the JVC Pro monitors. I have a small one of those. The best consumer tube I've seen still, though, it's this B&O sitting right here, this BioVision
Really?
1. It really looks incredible. It looks better than that Trinitron I just picked up. It's just such a beautiful, sharp, clean, vibrant image that really reminds me of an arcade monitor, but like a really well-tuned one. And it's but each one has their own characteristics. So it would be a mix. It would be plenty of Sony ones, but I'd also have some other brands in there as well. And it's really just, if I could actually have a museum set up, it would indeed be something to like showcase what I would have to pick a tube based on each use case, 240p, 480i interlaced, 480p, HD, computer inputs like VGA, all that kind of stuff. Because each one you can has a different best pick, right? So you kind of got to strategically choose based on what kind of content you're trying to show, if you want people to see it at its best.
Okay.
That's a bit ridiculous.
I didn't expect such a comprehensive answer. I'll be
pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
That's how we roll.
Seems like the CRT TV museum just needs real estate to happen.
That is the current limitation, real estate.
Alex, you've got a CRT. I mean, I do as well, but no plans for a museum.
All right.
No, I don't have the space for that. That would be great. The only kind of CRT I would really want would be like a monochrome for just a very old IBM, or even just like Apple monochrome, one of the colored monochrome ones. That's the one thing I'd be missing, and I'd kind of love to have, because I think they have their own look too.
You should specify when you say colored monochrome, you mean that.
I meant
like amber phosphors or like the green
amber
phosphor,
or
like
green. I don't
color.
mean. Yeah, singular color. Sorry, I should have said that better.
People
for
they
the
wait, it's
audience.
not black
John
and
knows
white.
what I'm talking about.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, something like that, because that's something I haven't seen. I mean, other than at like a tech show, like with John when we went to Gamescom, seeing those things in the wild is actually super rare, and having that to check out games that were built for that style of color or lack thereof is awesome. And you can't really, I don't think things usually look the same when emulated in that aspect.
Yeah, it's all about the Hercules graphics, isn't it?
Hercules.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that was the final question, and therefore the end of the show. So please do like, subscribe, share on the off chance you did enjoy it. Ring the bell for things that may or may not happen on your phone or browsing device. Store.digitalfoundry.net. Please check out all of our merchandising wares to help support the team. But the DF supporter program, that's what it's all about, supporting the team. Get early access to each and every DF Direct that we produce, the chance to contribute to the show, early access bonus materials. And actually, John, I'm just reminded I need to put up your new magazine Memories.
Content. That'd be great. That's a good one.
It's sitting there. I just need to do the admin. But yes, that's all for us on this one. And I guess being a weekly show, there's a pretty good likelihood you'll see us next week. So
hopefully,
see you next week.